Has someone ever tried to make you feel guilty for choosing yourself?
The thing about family is that they teach you how far you can be pushed, and on the night my sister tipped her glass and let a wide red bloom soak into my white couch while grinning like it was some joke we all signed up for, she didn't even pretend to be sorry. She just glanced at me, shrugged, and said, "Mom will make you chill out," as if my living room, my boundaries, and my wallet were part of her usual package deal, and I felt that old reflex to minimize it rising in my throat before I swallowed it like a bad pill and decided I was done playing that role. I stood there and counted my breaths slowly because anger never helped me once with either of them, and instead of snapping or lecturing or listing all the other times she had slid out of consequences like a greased marble, I walked to the kitchen, set the glass upright so it could not roll again, and said in a steady voice that we were going to deal with it now, which made her laugh harder because she always thinks I am bluffing when I sound calm. Mom jumped in with that tired line about things being replaceable and family being more important and how accidents happen, and I said it was interesting that accidents only seemed to happen when Ashley was holding the glass, which made Mom narrow her eyes like I was being unfair, and Ashley turned her head so she would not have to hear anything that sounded like responsibility. Then she said she did not have time for a lecture and that I should relax because life is short and couches are just things. I said I was not giving a lecture and I was not worked up, and to prove it I opened my phone and sent a quick message to Ashley that read, "You spilled wine on my white couch in front of me and Mom. Please confirm you will cover the professional cleaning." And I watched her eyes flick down to the screen and then flick up again with that bored expression she uses when she knows Mom will take her side. And she typed back, "Mom will handle it," which was perfect because now I had her words and not just my memory. Mom asked me not to make this a whole situation, which is her favorite way to say I should absorb the hit so the family stays peaceful, and I told her I was not making it a situation, I was solving one. And then I opened a payment app and sent Ashley a request labeled "Couch Cleaning, Your Spill," with a note that the amount would be updated after I got the exact quote, and Ashley barked out a laugh and declined it right away like swatting a fly, then turned to Mom with that look that says, "Get in there." Mom asked me to cancel any requests, to be reasonable, and to think of how stressed Ashley had been lately, and I said I was thinking of how stressed I had been for years listening to this exact script. But if it made everyone feel safer, I could absolutely cancel the request, which I did while they watched. And Ashley smirked like she had won a prize, which was fine with me because I already had what I needed and I wanted her comfortable. I took a photo of the stain for my records, not because I wanted to shame her, but because the last time something broke in my home the story changed so many times I felt insane trying to remember what we had all seen. And while they talked over me about how I was overreacting and how this was why people did not like coming over, I opened my notes and wrote the time, the date, and the simple line that Ashley had acknowledged the spill in writing and refused to pay, which felt like buckling my seatbelt before a rough patch of road. Ashley asked if we were done, because she had plans, and I said we were done for the night because I wanted the stain treated as soon as possible without more hands making it worse, and I asked her to finish her drink in the kitchen rather than over the furniture, which she called controlling, and I said it was called learning from a mistake in real time, and she rolled her eyes so hard I thought she might sprain something. She announced she was leaving because I had killed the vibe, and Mom put her arm around her like I had just thrown her out onto the street, and I said nobody was being thrown anywhere. People were adults who could decide where to be. And if Ashley felt her evening would be better elsewhere, that was fine with me since I had a few phone calls to make, and I preferred to do them without commentary from the peanut gallery. Before she walked out, Ashley leaned in close enough to make the point that she was not scared of me, that Mom would call me tomorrow, and that this would go away the way these things always do, because that is how our family works, and I just nodded like I agreed. Because if she wanted to believe history would save her again, I was not going to interrupt. After the door closed, Mom stayed behind and did the soft voice routine about sisterhood and forgiveness and how I should not make money the point, and I told her money was not the point at all, that respect was the point, and that I was not asking for an apology or a speech or anything dramatic. I wanted a basic acknowledgement that when you make a mess you pay to clean it up, which is a life skill most people learn by middle school. She said she would talk to Ashley and handle it, and I told her that would not be necessary this time, and she said of course it was necessary because Ashley had a lot going on and did not need more stress, and I said again that it would not be necessary because, truly, I had already handled it, and Mom blinked at me like she was not sure what that meant. While she tried to decode my tone, I opened my laptop, booked the first available professional cleaner for the next morning, and confirmed the service notes with a few details that would matter later. Then I closed the computer and told Mom I appreciated her stopping by, that I was going to bed, and that everything would be addressed, which made her suspicious because I was not giving her my usual play-by-play. Ashley texted a final, "LOL, good luck with your couch," as if she needed to puncture whatever dignity I had reclaimed, and I did not respond because I did not need her to understand anything yet. I only needed her to feel safe enough to keep underestimating me, which she did with Olympic form. I turned off the lights and sat for a minute breathing through the familiar ache that comes from being dismissed in your own home, and I decided I was not looking for fairness anymore, I was looking for clarity. And clarity meant letting people show you who they are and then acting accordingly, which is what I had finally decided to do. So when Mom asked again, quietly, if I was really going to let this escalate, I told her there was nothing to escalate, that she could sleep without worrying, and that she did not need to make any calls in the morning because there was nothing left for her to fix. And when she said, "What did you do?" I smiled in a way she could not read and said the only thing I was willing to say that night, which was that I had already taken care of it. When I woke up the next morning, I could feel that old muscle memory trying to pull me back into the dance where I make it easy for everyone, where I move the conversation away from accountability and toward peace so Mom can breathe and Ashley can keep her crown. And I stood in my kitchen thinking about how many times I had done exactly that while telling myself I was the reasonable one, when the truth was uglier, because I was the convenient one, the person who absorbed the hit so the story could keep flattering the people who caused the damage. The phone started before I could pour coffee, and of course it was Mom using the gentle voice that always means a lecture is coming, asking if I slept and reminding me that my sister had a lot going on and that she would cover the cleaning because this was not worth a rift, and I listened without interrupting because interruptions never help in my family. Then I said something I had never said before, which was that I appreciated the offer and I was declining it because I was not accepting. Help that erased the lesson, and I could almost hear the shock travel through the line like a little freeze in the air when a store turns off the lights at closing time. She shifted tactics like she always does, telling me that grown women do not keep score, that we rise above, and I said rising above is not the same as lying down, and that I was done pretending consequences were cruelty. And then I did the single most unexciting and revolutionary thing I could do, which was to put everything in writing while staying calm, because in my family the person who documents looks like a villain until the truth needs a receipt. So I typed a neutral message in the family chat stating the time, the spill, the scheduled cleaning for the next morning, and the simple expectation that the person who caused the damage would handle the cost, and I ended it with a thank you for understanding so there would be no bait for a fight. Ashley replied with a laughing reaction and the line about how I was dramatic, followed by the classic promise that Mom would handle it, and I answered only with a thumbs up spelled out in words because I was not feeding the performance. Then I muted the chat and sat with the familiar discomfort that comes when you choose a new behavior, that itchy feeling that maybe you will be punished for daring to want respect inside your own home, and I let it run through me without doing anything to make it stop, which felt like a workout for a part of my spine I had ignored for years. While the cleaner confirmed the window for the afternoon, I made another small move that meant more than anyone would notice, which was to remove my payment information from the household app my mother still used when she wanted to help by booking services under my name, the thing that had allowed so many graceful cover-ups to move quietly through my accounts, because if we were going to be adults, then adults could maintain their own profiles and pay their own bills, and if that sounded cold, then maybe cold was what clarity looked like after a lifetime of being told warmth meant erasing yourself. Mom called again to say she had already reached out to a friend who knew a guy and could get the cleaning for less if I would just let her run point, and I told her no with a voice so steady it surprised me. And when she asked why I was making this into a lesson, I said the part that always makes her angry, which is that it has been a lesson for me for years, the wrong one, the one where I learned that my needs are negotiable if they inconvenience Ashley. And that I was rewriting that rule now. Not with a speech, just with simple steps that any adult would recognize as normal. Then I made the move that felt like slipping the final piece into a quiet puzzle, which was to call the cleaning company, confirm the service notes, and clarify that the invoice should be sent to the responsible party whose name and address I provided from Ashley's own public filings and delivery brag posts. And the representative said that was fine as long as the responsible party was notified. And I said she had been notified in the chat and in a direct message and had declined to resolve it. And I asked the company to include a copy of those messages that I would forward immediately, which I did, attaching her line about Mom handling it so there would be no confusion about who had accepted responsibility in spirit while refusing it in practice. By noon, Ashley texted me privately with the usual mix of condescension and threat, calling me petty and promising this would blow back on me at the next holiday. And I told her there was nothing petty about matching action to consequence, and that I wished her a calm afternoon because screaming at me had never once reversed a fee. Then I left the conversation alone so the silence could do its quiet work, because silence has a way of forcing people to hear themselves when the audience stops clapping. Late in the day, Mom tried once more, softer now, asking if I would at least let her put the charge on her card to keep peace, and I said the peace she wanted was the kind that only exists when I take the hit, and that I loved her, but I would not subsidize the illusion anymore. And when she asked me what exactly I had done, I told her we were all about to see the grown-up version of consequences, and that she did not need to fix anything this time, because fixing was exactly how we kept breaking, and if she stayed out of the way for one day, just one, she would understand, which is when the notification pinged on my phone and I saw the first confirmation note from the cleaner go out addressed to my sister. And I let the moment sit there between us while Mom whispered my name like a warning, and I said, very gently, that tomorrow would be instructive. By the time the cleaner's morning confirmation popped into my inbox and I forwarded it to the family chat with the same calm note about responsibility that I had sent the night before, the performance machine had already started up on the other end, with Ashley sending a laughing reaction and a one-liner about me being dramatic, while Mom followed with a careful paragraph about how a good sister would not humiliate family over a stain, and I could feel the old nerves looking for a way to appease them, but instead of bending I did the plain, adult things no one in my family likes to admit are reasonable, which meant I removed Mom's access to my household service accounts, set Ashley as the responsible contact for this work order with her full name and email, attached the screenshot where she wrote that Mom would handle it so there was no confusion about the original dodge, and then muted the thread so the noise could bounce off a closed door rather than ricocheting around my head all day. Ashley pivoted to private messages in that half-joking, half-threatening tone she uses when she wants to keep plausible deniability, telling me I was petty, warning that this would play badly at the next family gathering, and adding that she had already called the company to put the invoice under my name because obviously you booked it, which would have rattled me once upon a time, yet now only confirmed that I had chosen the right move. And within minutes the company called to verify that. Someone claiming to be the responsible party's mother was asking to redirect the bill, so I thanked the representative for checking, told them that the only authorized payer was the person who caused the damage, and asked them to add stain protection after the cleaning since I was not interested in repeating this episode a second time, and if that small add-on increased the total a bit, then that was fine by me because it was my couch and my boundary, and neither of those would be managed by committee any longer. Mom tried another angle later, calling to tell me she had found a cheaper option through a friend and that I should cancel what I had scheduled in favor of something less aggressive, and I said I appreciated the research and would pass next time, that I had no desire to haggle or chase favors, that the price was the price and the lesson was the lesson, and when she told me I was turning into a cold person, I reminded her that cold and clear are sometimes the same temperature, and that she had spent years telling me to keep the peace while never noticing the bill always landed on me, which is a kind of heat I no longer intended to live under. And while she tooted into the phone, I opened the settings on another legacy burden I had been carrying for longer than made sense, the extra line on my phone plan that I had kept for Ashley out of habit and guilt. And I began the transfer of responsibility so that in 30 days she would be the sole owner of her number and the sole owner of the monthly cost, because at some point adulthood has to start or the rest of us pay rent to keep it from arriving. When Ashley realized the company would not switch the invoice, her tone sharpened into the kind of insult that hopes to knock you off balance, telling me I was vindictive and small, that a decent sister would swallow this and move on. And I told her I had swallowed so many versions of this that I had forgotten what my own voice sounded like, and that moving on was exactly what I was doing, which meant not carrying what she dropped anymore, and while she peppered my phone with rapid-fire texts about how I was ruining the family vibe, the company sent the official invoice to the email on file for the responsible party and copied me for records, a simple one-page document that spelled out the service, the protective treatment I had added, the payment window of 10 business days written plainly, and the late fee language that any adult with a bank account has seen and survived, and for reasons that probably say everything about our difference, I felt calmer the moment it landed because the proof no longer relied on my memory. Mom called within minutes, voice tight, saying Ashley had forwarded the invoice and that I should be ashamed for dragging your sister into bureaucracy, and I said there was nothing shameful about an invoice, that bills are not a moral failing. They are reminders that life has cause and effect, and that if she wanted to help her beloved youngest child, then the helpful thing would be to say, pay what you owe, learn from it, and stop wasting your sister's time. And when she told me I had become cruel, I said no, I had become literal, and that I was done with speeches, that the only conversations I intended to have from now on would be about actions and receipts, and while she tried one last time to get me to pull it back, so it does not escalate, my phone buzzed with Ashley's new message, not a joke this time, not a shrug, but a single line asking whether the company could really send this to collections if she ignored it, and I let the message sit unread while I made myself breathe. And reminded myself that a boundary is only a boundary if you keep it when the other person finally feels it. Then I typed one sentence that was neither loud nor unkind, telling her she could read the terms on the invoice like any other adult, because I was not her secretary, and then I put my phone face down and thought, she still has no idea what is already in motion. The following morning began with a kind of calm I was not used to, the kind that comes not from peace, but from certainty, because for once I knew that I was not about to be maneuvered into another round of pleading, apologizing, or smoothing things over so Ashley could keep believing that life worked in her favor simply because she had always been allowed to bend the rules. And as the cleaner arrived right on schedule, rolled in the equipment, and got to work on the couch without a hint of drama, I sat at the kitchen table sipping coffee and thinking about how many times I had been told to stay quiet so that Ashley could remain comfortable, and how surreal it felt to finally be watching the consequence machine hum along with no need for me to raise my voice or justify my position. The invoice was generated before the cleaner even pulled the hose back into the van, crisp and professional, with Ashley's name and address printed clearly at the top, along with the total that included the protective treatment I had added, and the 10-day window spelled out in straightforward language that made it impossible to pretend confusion, and I forwarded a copy to both Mom and Ashley without comment, letting the document do the speaking that I had always been pressured to water down. Mom called almost instantly, her voice shaking between outrage and disbelief, demanding to know why on earth I had dared to involve an outside service in our family matters. And I told her calmly that I had not involved anyone in anything beyond what they were hired to do, that a professional cleaner is not a judge, not a mediator, but simply someone paid to do a job and send a bill to the right account, and that this is how adults solve problems when they do not want to shout across kitchen tables for the rest of their lives. Ashley texted in her usual style, opening with mocking disbelief about how insane I was for letting strangers know her information, followed by a string of complaints about privacy and betrayal. But I did not bother to remind her that she had plastered her details across social media for years when bragging about deliveries, vacations, and concert tickets, which made it laughably easy to provide the cleaner with the correct contact info. And instead, I told her that what she called exposure was actually accountability, that when you live as an adult, you take responsibility for your actions instead of passing them off to someone else, and that she might want to start practicing this new skill because life has a way of repeating lessons until you finally learn them. Mom tried to cut in again, softening her voice this time to explain that Ashley was going through a difficult period with work, with bills, with stress, and that the compassionate choice would be to let this go. But I reminded her that I had gone through my own difficult periods for years without a safety net, that nobody wiped away my overdraft fees when I was working double shifts in college, that nobody paid for my car repair when I had to commute in the middle of winter, and that if I had survived all of that without passing the costs on to Ashley, then Ashley could certainly survive the cost of cleaning a couch she had ruined while smirking at me in my own home. The conversation shifted in a way that felt familiar, with Mom accusing me of trying to teach lessons rather than show love, but I told her love without accountability is not love, it is control dressed in sugar. And I was not interested in living under that flavor anymore, and when she asked why I could not simply forgive and move on, I told her I had forgiven more times than I could count, but moving on does not mean carrying someone else's baggage forever. It means putting it back on their shoulders so they can finally notice how heavy it is. Ashley escalated later that afternoon, forwarding me screenshots of her online banking app with sarcastic captions about how she was not about to pay for my neurotic cleaning obsession, claiming that wine stains were natural and couches were meant to be used, and that I was pathetic for thinking this would hold up if she simply ignored it. But I reminded her that ignoring an invoice does not erase it, it escalates it, and that if she wanted to test how far she could stretch her luck, she was welcome to let the late fees start piling up, because unlike Mom, the company would not cave after a few tears or a guilt trip. They would simply send it to collections, and collections has no patience for golden child theatrics. Mom called once more in the evening, her tone slipping into desperation, warning me that if I went through with this, it would create a permanent rift between me and my sister, that family gatherings would never be the same, that I would be branded as cruel. And I told her gently but firmly that the rift already existed. It had been there for years, stitched into every moment when Ashley was shielded from responsibility while I was told to swallow my pride, and that the only difference now was that I was refusing to cover the gap anymore, because I had discovered that a rift does not heal by pretending it isn't there. It heals when both sides carry their own weight across it. As I ended the call, I glanced at the invoice one more time, sitting neatly in my inbox with Ashley's name printed across the top like a banner of truth, and I felt the quiet satisfaction of knowing that the setup was complete, that all the pieces were in place, and that for once I did not have to shout, argue, or beg to be heard, because the paper trail was louder than my voice had ever been, and the only thing left was to let the consequence land in front of her with no cushion, no safety net, and no escape route designed by Mom, which meant that for the first time in my adult life, I was not the one carrying the mess out of the room. The day Ashley finally showed up at my door, storming in with the crumpled invoice in her hand and Mom trailing just a few steps behind her like a lawyer who had already given up on her client but refused to admit it, I knew immediately that the moment I had been waiting for had arrived, because the loud footsteps, the dramatic sighs, and the look of outrage on her face were not the signs of someone who was confident in their innocence, but of someone who had been caught in a net she didn't even realize had been cast until it tightened around her. Ashley threw the paper down on the table like she was slamming evidence in a courtroom, pointing at the line with her name on it and yelling that I had crossed a line by dragging a family matter into the real world, and while she spit out words about betrayal, about humiliation, about how unfair this all was, I sat back in my chair and let her rant, because for once her noise didn't shake me the way it used to, it only confirmed that every step I had taken had been worth it. Mom immediately tried to cut in, raising her voice over Ashley's to say I could not seriously expect her daughter to pay this ridiculous bill, that I should know how fragile she was right now, and that a good sister would never do something like this. And I let her finish too, because the old version of me would have rushed to defend, rushed to explain, rushed to smooth things over, but the version sitting there now only waited for the silence to fall, then picked up the invoice, smoothed out the edges Ashley had crumpled in her fury, and said in a voice so even it startled both of them that I was not asking for an apology, not asking for a performance, not even asking for an admission of guilt, because the truth was simpler than all of that. The bill had already been sent, the account was already set, and the responsibility was already hers whether she liked it or not. Ashley blinked like she hadn't understood, like maybe I was bluffing, so I explained it again, slowly, that the invoice was no longer something I controlled, that I had handed it over to the professionals whose entire job was to complete the work and collect the payment, and that if she refused, the matter would simply shift from a friendly invoice to a collections file, and that the collection office would not care about birth order, family politics, or how many times Mom insisted that Ashley had a lot going on, because all they would see was an unpaid balance tied to her name, and they would pursue it without sentiment. The look on her face in that moment, the split second where her jaw dropped and she realized Mom could not shield her from this one, was the kind of clarity I had been denied my entire life, because it proved that she was not untouchable, not immune, not above the rules, and for the first time, the golden child looked exactly like everyone else when the world finally handed her the bill. Mom tried again, softer this time, asking me if I really wanted to destroy the bond between sisters over something as trivial as a couch, and I told her the couch was never the point, that the point was the years of being told to absorb damage so Ashley could stay untouched, and that this was not about wine or fabric, but about showing Ashley and her protector that the era of endless indulgence was over, that adulthood meant carrying your own weight, and that if they hated me for finally drawing the line, then I could live with that more easily than I could live with one more year of swallowing my dignity in my own house. Ashley muttered that she would never forgive me, that I had gone too far, that I was cruel, and I told her she did not need to forgive me, that forgiveness was not the currency here, the currency was payment, and that once she handled the bill, she could return to ignoring me if she liked, but what she could not do was pretend that I would carry her mistakes anymore, because that chapter had closed the second the invoice landed in her inbox. The room was heavy with the kind of silence that comes when people realize the old playbook doesn't work anymore, and while Ashley stood there gripping the paper with her mouth half open and Mom looked at me like I had become someone unrecognizable, I felt a strange, quiet relief spreading through me, not the triumph of victory, not the gloating satisfaction of revenge, but the deeper relief of finally proving to myself that I did not have to play their game anymore, that I could choose rules that worked for me and stick to them even when it made everyone else furious. When they finally left, muttering to each other about how I had changed, how I had lost my compassion, how the family would never feel the same, I shut the door and leaned against it for a long moment, breathing in the truth that for once I had not bent, not broken, not taken it back at the last second. And while I knew the holidays ahead would be tense, and the phone calls fewer, and the gossip sharper, I also knew something far more important, that Ashley had paid her first real bill, that Mom had been forced to watch her favorite learn that rules exist even for her, and that I had finally stepped out of the role of family fixer into the role of someone who expects respect and does not apologize for demanding it. And as I looked at the couch, cleaner now than it had been the day I bought it, I realized that it was never about fabric or stains at all. It was about drawing a line that could not be erased, and for the first time in years, I let myself smile. Because I had won in the only way that mattered, not by punishing them, but by refusing to play their game, by shifting the balance, and by proving that I was no longer the convenient one. I was the one who finally made sure the bill landed where it belonged.